All right, welcome to the HADES Breakout, which is a chance for us to discuss what HADES is, but more importantly, kind of where it's going and how we will grow its impact across the Odyssey community. We should probably start with some brief introductions. I know many of the participants here, but there are a couple that I don't. My name's Marc Suchard. I'm a professor of biostatistics at UCLA and one of the co-leads of the HADES work group. I'll turn this over to Adam in a minute, but let me give a brief introduction to kind of the HADES and the work group before we say hi to everyone else. So HADES stands for the Health Analytics Data and Data to Evidence Suite. It's a series of R packages that you could colloquially think of as the Odyssey tool stack. It was formerly known as the Odyssey Methods Library. And it consists of many of the R packages that you know and love at the higher level. We have the population level estimation packages like cohort method and the self-controlled case series, patient level prediction. These build on a large number of supporting packages that get used across the community, like database connector, SQL renderer, and feature extraction. Each of these packages has a set of developers and maintainers, and the HADES work group is an opportunity for these maintainers and the contributors across the community, of which there are many, can come together and discuss how we can continue to the development of this tool stack to promote reliable healthcare decisions based on observational data. So that's sort of the only kind of prepared stuff that we have for this discussion. Let's start with a quick round of introductions, and then we can field a couple of starting questions for the discussion. So Adam, do you mind saying hi? And I'll kill the screen share.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Black. I'm a data scientist at OHDSI, and much newer to Odyssey and HADES than Marc is, but really excited to be a part of the HADES work group and working on these important packages.
Are there sort of a not quite regular HADES participant that would like to take this opportunity to kind of to say hi, so we have an idea of who everyone is?
I guess I can go as no one's go.
Thanks, James.
I'm Jamie, or most people call me JPEG. I'm in the ODA group at J&J, and yeah, I'm a data scientist, and I'm gradually being more and more involved in HADES as time goes on. And yeah, I hope to be able to write more code that helps everyone, I guess.
Ed, can I pick on you a little bit to take a moment to say hi, since a number of the package maintainers might not be familiar with you?
Sure.
Sorry, Ed.
No, that's okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Ed Byrne. I'm a postdoc researcher in Danny Prieto's group at Oxford and in Talita's group out here in Barcelona. I would think of myself more of a user of the packages. So I guess I'm here partly out of interest, but also kind of interested in kind of first steps in terms of contributing to them. And yeah.
That's great, thank you. Is there another relative newcomer would like to take this opportunity to say hi?
I'll introduce myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Faiza. I am currently an undergraduate student at UCLA. And yeah, I'm just here to listen in on what's been going on with the HADES group.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to start the discussion with a rather broad question to see if that works, and then we can move into sort of a more open discussion. What's working or working well about the Odyssey tool stack that HADES is providing? What have been our big successes, right? We've talked about our objectives and results moving forward, but we haven't talked much about what our successes are.
Mark, I can speak up for HADES if you like, as a kind of relatively, probably not a rookie, but a sophomore by now, in the Odyssey community. I think part of the success of HADES is the kind of coverage of different methods that are needed or necessary for both prediction and estimation or causal inference in real-world evidence. So it's, I think, a very comprehensive package of tools and packages and libraries to do most of the things that we need to do in this field.
Do you mind if I poke a little bit? So I mean, this is going to be an open discussion, so hopefully I'll inspire some others. Most of the things that we want to do in the field, this is a very leading statement and will help us sort of move forward. What are we missing?
I think we are potentially, if you look at the kind of reviewer feedback and so on, we are potentially missing some granularity in terms of some of the models that people request, like, you know, when you want to look at events that compete with mortality, which is any event really, I guess, you might want to have something to account for that. Potentially, yeah, some different management of missingness in some of the confounders, like, you know, potentially not that much in claims data, but in EHR, when you have lab data or, I don't know, clinical measurements like body mass index, and you have that only for a subset of the population, we end up kind of dismissing a little bit the issue of missingness or incompleteness with those measurements. Those, I think, the two main kind of reviewer comments that we don't know how to handle.
Yeah, I guess following from that, so a positive and a negative, I think, is if you look at, say, the Legend study, I think that's like kind of a template for observational research, right? Like, you see that paper and compared to even other papers in the Lancet, it's like a step beyond anything anyone else is doing. And I guess that's somewhat tied into the limitation, I'd say, is like, why are there so few people using it, using the tool, right? Because if you can do that, then why are there only, like, I don't know, 10 people or less who are able to do it? Which is not necessarily a negative. It's just, yeah, I guess that's the drawback, I would say.
Yeah, I would second that, Ed. Actually, yeah, I feel like it's clear that the tools are incredibly powerful, but I do wonder why more people aren't kind of jumping on it. And I think that maybe there are a myriad of reasons, but it seems like a lot of researchers who are kind of new to Odyssey and the common data model, they just kind of want to go with their normal approach and extract some data, get it on their computer, and work with it. Mm.
So that opens up kind of, you know, sort of two different threads in my mind. The first is probably less important, but it's immediately following on what Adam commented on, is, you know, how do we also provide a cohesive tool set that allows the less initiated individual to still use the tool stack to do what they're used to doing, or at least the parts of what they're used to doing that we as a community might agree with. And then the second which didn't make it onto our OKRs, is, how do we make this tool stack more usable for a larger community, vis-a-vis kind of Ed's comments that, hey, what we've done with it is pretty impressive, but others aren't following suit. Is there something we can do about that?
So, Mark, I think, Mark, this is Gautam. I think you may want to caveat that by saying, you do the regular user and investigator, are we enabling them to create study packages from scratch, or assisting with the creation of study package and then they independently execute it? I think they're two different things. I think HADES has achieved a high level of success in us collaboratively creating study packages and then various investigators running them independently. But I think we have not achieved that level of success in investigators independently coming up with their own ideas and creating the study packages and bringing it to the community.
So what I have seen, actually, it sort of resonates a little bit with what Adam was saying. And actually, I was just in a call yesterday with somebody who was actually building propensity score models without the OHDSI tools. And we were asking, why did you do that? Oh, that was the thing I knew how to use. We put it to R and we just get it to work. So it was, I've been hearing that repeatedly over and over and over again. And I think there are many phases to that. But one of the things I point in the past, that even me, with the level of exposure that I'm being to the package right now, it will take me a full 20 hours just to get to execute anything very simple into any of the OHDSI stack. Like, I already understood I understand the stack. I understand a lot of the nuances of the tools, but it will take me at least 20 hours to let run a single very dummy stuff. So I don't really know how to share that gap, but it's what I'm feeling, and we've been trying to actually ask the people why you don't really go to this route. So.
I mean, these are great points. Very early on, when cohort method was put together, we had a simple vignette. It's now called the single analysis vignette, has sort of been completely forgotten, right? And it basically shows the 5 or 6 commands that are commands that you need to execute to run a standard comparative effectiveness study, and kind of the knowledge or the belief that you can just do something that straightforward has sort of been lost, right? There's this idea that if you want to use the Odyssey tool stack, you got to start with Atlas, and you got to create this study package through Atlas, and that immediately puts everything in this sort of obfuscated multiple analysis framework where it does the Cartesian product of everything. Maybe we need to take a couple steps back and in our education and educate on how you use these packages effectively for small studies that most people want to start with.
I think it might also relate somewhat to the comment in the chat about characterization, because if you're starting your kind of process by characterizing data, and you do that in a bespoke manner yourself, extracting data and so on, it then kind of goes on from there that, okay, well, I'll just do the same, I'll use the same process to do the modeling and so on. So perhaps if that gap was filled in a little bit in terms of the characterization side of things, it would help kind of just get the ball rolling.
What might characterization tools look like? Sorry, Ozzy, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I think feature extraction kind of does most of it, right? It's just maybe people aren't so aware of you can just use it on its own, not kind of bundled into like an Atlas package. But even just summary statistics of cohorts and so on, that's pretty bespoke. If you've got a list of concepts you're interested in, and summarizing that for a cohort like table ones and so on. I guess that's my initial starting point normally.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that totally, like, not having characterization work done in an R package is definitely makes the process less complete from the scientific perspective, where you want to see the story, you want to see how data tells you on the characterization side, and then think of the estimation problem, and not being able to, like, Atlas user would need to, navigate between the two systems, which is fine and it works, but having everything as a work like in R word and in R package would make it much more easier to understand and work with. But saying that, the problem is, think exactly what you asked, Mark. What exactly is a characterization thing would be, because once you go to characterization, it's a big universe of things, and it's very hard to think of the situation that will accomplish 99% of the users' cases, because everybody might, like, people look at different things, and what exactly is that you characterize, and how does it look, because the reports might also look very different. So it's a challenge, but definitely thinking about this problem and putting it in an R package would make the scientific process more complete.
Yeah, we I think it was, I don't know, time all blurred together, but I guess it was somewhere 2 years ago. We had done an assessment of like the top 100 papers in one of the, I forget what Patrick had linked us to, but we started looking at it and we found that a large proportion of those are characterization based, not estimation based. And so if you build off what Oz is describing, it, if somebody starts off by saying, I want to do a characterization, and they're not in this tool set, by the time they get to the point where they want to run an estimation study, they've already kind of gone down a path that hasn't started here. So if we think of something as simple as, I want to calculate an incidence rate, and I know there's been work with that. I know Anthony Senna and Chris Knoll have done some things where they're trying to get the packages or the way an incidence rate is calculated through Atlas to become more accessible to people within the R environment. It's like, that's something somebody would do that's more of a characterization. And then we could all do our favorite analysis, which is the unadjusted incidence rate comparison. I know, Mark, that's your favorite, but like being able to start there, that would be helpful. And then once people are more comfortable doing that, they'll be able to do the more advanced, what we view as commonplace, but for many people are the more advanced types of analyses. But if they don't start, or if we don't allow them to start by doing some of the simpler things, they're not going to build into the bigger things. And also, I think, again, going back to that thing, that statistic that it was like, I don't know, 80-something% of the top papers were characterization based, means by ignoring that piece, we're just going to be left out of use for most things.
I think part of the characterization challenge that we have, which parallels the estimation challenge, is kind of the point that a characterization can be many, many things. And so one needs a set of tools that are very expressive, meaning they have, each object is very simple and they can be composed in a large number of different ways to construct a very rich, scientific sentence. Part of the challenge that I've found with the extant HADES packages is they are almost the antithesis of expressive, right? They have very prescriptive functions that do only what the developer wants them to do. The classic example for characterization is in cohort method, there's this function called, generate or plot table one, where, is supposed to give you your whole characterization of the population, but you have no control on or at least easy expressive control on what gets outputted, what you're conditioning on, all these types of expressive elements that we'd like to compose together. So, long term, maybe we need to think about making the tool stack more expressively composable, breaking it into simple objects that work together. And that might be, serve as an easier introduction for users. Sorry, go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask a question like, I would argue that a lot of the packages we have today are what I would consider opinionated, meaning they are prescriptive in some way. So in cohort method, should we have a flag that allows me to alternate between propensity score matching or cardinality matching, right? Like there's competing thought that one way works better or not, but our packages today are somewhat opinionated and say this is, and I think that's a good thing, right? It's like we don't want to enable bad signs using the packages. So I think we have to be careful when we say we're going to let people have more options and flexibility. But at the same time, we don't want to say like, yeah, this positive negative control thing, you could just exclude that. It's not necessary.
I think somewhat relatedly, kind of as I would say, like fairly average R user, like normally what you'd be doing when you're looking for packages to help you work with data is you're looking for a function to help you kind of in your whole script to pick out parts and so on. Whereas the whole Odyssey approach is very different, right? It's as someone coming in, you're presented with Atlas, you download like this big bunch of code, and it's very hard to know which parts of that you can tweak and so on. And so, and like you say, there is a vignette where it's like single study and there's a function you can use just for the propensity score matching or feature extraction. Like yesterday, I just wanted to extract the Charleston score for some patients. So I could use feature extraction for that. But I don't think many people would follow that workflow. I think most people would have the impression that you've got an entire study package or you've got nothing from Odyssey. So yeah, I think it's not even necessarily writing more code, it's just sharing that with people to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, even sharing the 10 commands that you need to run a large comparative effectiveness study, like in the supplementary material, which we're currently completely ignoring, will help show some of the composability of the tools and make it easier for readers to say, hey, I can handle doing this myself. Kind of the all or none is troublesome for me.
And one question that I actually asked before is that I believe the HADES could be used without a CDM, right? So you can actually have a feature matrix that is fully square already, and you can actually use it, right?
Yeah, for many of the downstream analyses, yeah, it's certainly not CDM based. There are some composable tools that do a better job of that, and we could certainly make others make the convenient wrapper tools, that take X and Y wherever they may be and suck them in. That's what I mean by composability. We don't really have those expressive wrappers across all the packages. But that might help adoption.
Because that is actually strong suit, right? I see actually already, and I'm trying to preach that to the people that I can, saying like you can actually use the tools, and having your own feature matrix already, you have it. So right, so that's where we've been trying to push people there. Like it's not exclusively you have a CDM, like you can actually use it if you already have that feature matrix because you get the data from somebody else or somewhere else, right? So
yeah, and that's completely undocumented, and that's almost completely undocumented. And perhaps in the kind of the education that we do, which includes documentation, we should show those inroads which aren't shown yet.
Yeah, Mark, I really like your comments about composability and having small pieces that kind of do one thing and work together, because I also agree that a lot of the Odyssey tools are kind of like entire pipelines, and that's kind of the way it's designed to go from CDM to evidence. But I think a lot of people like to have these intermediate steps and kind of and also like I think it maybe people are uncomfortable with like not having an analytic data set, and in some studies maybe it's not possible because it's so large. But if your cohort's fairly small, then I can see a researcher wanting to have sort of a patient level data set that they can save and go back to.
Mark, can I ask a clarification question? How do you imagine that decomposition? Is it subsetting the packages to do certain pieces, or is it more of education of where you find a certain piece within the existing big package?
Yeah, so I don't want to dominate the discussion, but it certainly can be both, right? One way to make something more expressive is to show what each of the small words in the language are, and at least in kind of the training and indoctrinating that we've done over the last couple of years, that's been completely hidden. Some of this expressiveness exists, right? I can call, there is a function called create propensity score, and it takes an object, but we never tell anyone what what the shape of that input is. And sort of Jose's point is, well, if we tell people what the shape of that input is, or make a simple wrapper so it's a standard shape, there's a Y matrix, there's a Y matrix, and there's a X, a dense X matrix is a stupid way of starting. Then they can use those. But there's also the kind of long-term re-engineering of the packages that of the code that we currently have. The cardinality matching is a great example, right? Our functions have no hooks to call back to do something different, right? I have to fit a propensity score model using logistic regression, right? There's instead of developing functions, instead of developing an expressive language where I send it a function that creates my propensity score, and the default might be, sure, let's do logistic regression, large scale logistic regression, but it's easy enough to wrap some other functionality in there.
And I also talk too much. One of the one of the things that I've been also exploring, like given that we're talking about adoption, is that I don't know how many of you already know about Google Collaboratory. So is this completely free to use Jupyter Notebook-based platform, and they actually just recently enabled an R kernel. Mm-hmm. So maybe that is for a subset of things that we like to reach out people and share. That would be an awesome resource, because it's a living document, fully executable, that people can just take in, run, and it's because we actually are writing the code, is 100% sure that people can actually run it, and we have autonomia, right? So there is data to be run. So I think there is a strong potential in sharing that, or creating those small snippets. I actually already have been trying to do some of that, but I've not been really successful. But but one of the things that is trying to move in that direction, or fully executed things that people can just tap and run.
So you should start with a single analysis in cohort method. Start with a single analysis vignette against pneumonia. It's totally fine as kind of a starting point, and see if we can get that into the only difference between the R vignettes and running on Google the Collaboratorium is they provide you get hardware along with it. So yeah, we should try that and see if that increases, if the hardware limitation, getting everything installed is the limiting bit, then that's a great way to go.
Mark, you're still collecting issues, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. So I have a slightly different than the other ones that have been discussed here, and it is about deployment of a trusted package. So here's what happens, right? So for many organizations, they who essentially are locked down for whatever reason, either for commercial reason or because of very strict data protection practices that they're following or so. The idea that you run something that dynamically pulls some spaghetti code from the internet and runs that on their data only works because it's so complicated that they don't see through that. And when the moment they see through that, it's over. Okay, you can't do that. Because how do I know what it does, right? How do I know it just doesn't package, or somebody changes it on the fly and does some select star from somewhere in the middle and hides it. And we can't just say, well, look, we have a nice community, we don't do such things. So this is one question, and then the follow-up question on top of that is, you probably don't want to do all of these kind of like commercialization, productization activities, because you want to focus on the advancements of the methodology. There's somewhere a way for external organizations to actually officially like pick things up and say, okay, I take it from here and I turn that into a commercial tool. People will pay for that. It'll do exactly what HADES does. Okay. However, I hardened it in such a way that like those organizations won't have a problem with that. And by the way, I can also provide then support, and I can provide whatever else, right? So can take a lot of the load off that volunteer armies are not good at doing. So is there anything that, how do you feel about like making an API not from a programming perspective, but from a deployment and utilization and commercialization perspective?
So what are the feelings out there about, I mean, kind of the first step is coming up with a framework so that we can outsource this type of work. I think it's Christian's suggestion.
Yeah, outsource and then somehow solve the trust problem.
Yeah. Well, it's trust because they paid a lot of money for it.
Well, that if they paid a lot of money, but yeah. But is there? I mean, there are ways to say something. Okay, here is public domain. The community built and tested it. It's kosher. Okay, and you can't touch it anymore. If you touch it, then it becomes obvious that it's touched, and then it's no longer the clean version. So I don't know. I'm making it up. I'm not into these type of technologies. I don't know how to do that. But it's clearly a problem for institutions who want to adopt. I just had that conversation today.
I can describe another kind of very related issue, I think, that Greg and I have talked about, which is that HADES kind of changes very quickly, and each of the packages developers are going to be pushing changes. And then someone designs a study, they're going to use a set of packages, and whatever set they decide, that's their set of packages. But we don't necessarily, all those packages haven't necessarily been tested together, and then when we deploy on Arachne or have some other execution, like the Arachne execution engine, we want like a set of packages that we know are going to work together very well. And so that's kind of hard to do when each study is using different set of packages and there's no overall versioning for HADES.
So I think one example from other set of R packages is the tidyverse. And you can just go and install the tidyverse, and it will have all the set of packages for that. I think with deep layering things, it doesn't have as many breakages over time, but especially with Odyssey, the ability to install one kind of wrapper that installs all the others that are kind of linked together would help, I think, as a user, because often we're installing all of them individually. If that makes sense.
I mean, it leads into a larger discussion that we've had in terms of, versioning, long-term support, right? Long-term support leads to, at least the statement leads to credibility that users might be looking for. Who on the call has had experience kind of moving a public or public domain analytics into a professional software development community? I'm just an academic. I'm totally useless for things like that.
If we're talking about R packages, this is Jenny, by the way. Let me turn on the camera for a sec. They've qualified, I think, based R and a couple of other packages. I don't think Tidyverse is there yet. It certainly gets more support than some other packages. The way they get around versioning in more regulated and, the implementation side of things is they tend to spin up those Dockers and freeze everything, including package versions and everything else, and just have it run there. That seems to be the most successful way. There are also package managers, like a Packrat or something. I don't think they work quite as well, though.
Containers, it's a great topic. It's a great topic for us to end on because there's been a whole lot of pushback in the community against containerization.
Yeah, so I've been one of the advocates, right, of containers. and there are so many, like the three main complaints of containers are like they are Trojan horses, right? So, and I think that problem is already solved because there are many container scanner services. So I don't think that should be a showstopper, but it may be, right? It's just a service that you may be willing to pay or not, but there are container scanning services. Second, you need sudo access. That problem is also solved because Singularity actually allows you to spin up a container that does not require sudo access. And I already have tested that and it works. And it's been used in a lot of high performance computing centers when they just install Singularity and containers do work there. And the third is the third complaint is that maybe is the technology is too new and people doesn't really know how to use it. So we're taking a stance of that, and we've been actually trying to even convince end users. We've been even putting some YouTube tutorials to like actually telling users this is how you can actually use a container even for you. So I think those are the sort of the three main complaints I have heard. I'm not aware of others, but yes, it's what I know so far.
As a current squasher of Docker containers in existing packages, I'm not opposed to to the containers. I just think the way we approach it, like the idea what I found was in an Achilles package we have a Docker image, and it's like, well, no, Achilles is an R package. If we want to have a Docker container that then supports saying I just want the current instance of all the HADES packages or everything with Eunomia so I could actually do some testing, I think that should be a separate standalone thing. We have Odyssey in a box for that, and I guess the question would be, do we need something else in addition to that to support what we're trying to do?
Yeah, this is the beginning of a very extensive and important discussion. I want to be mindful of everyone's time, and thank you for taking your time for us to discuss sort of moving HADES forward. If the issues of containerization, expressibility, software for large-scale analytics is of interest to you, we have a monthly work group meeting. And everyone is not only invited to come to the meetings, but participate in our open community of software development. So thank you, everybody.